Feed Your Family Tonight podcast. Each week, we are serving up motivation and inspiration to help you get weeknight dinner on the table, letting you recapture a little calm in the crazy. And now, your host, speaker, author, and married mother of four, Mariefiebach.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Feed Your Family Tonight podcast, episode 126, How to Cook Chicken. I'm your host, Mariefiebach, and today we're going to do kind of a bird's eye view of how to cook chicken because cooking chicken is a really big topic, but I also know it's one that most families are doing several times a week. There are entire books that are dedicated to chicken. Stacy Billis was on the podcast. She's got a really great book, Winner, Winner Chicken Dinner, with a bunch of recipes for cooking chicken. There are people that have amazing books on cooking chicken, but I am here to help you, the home cook, not become a chicken chef, but to cook chicken maybe just a little bit better or maybe a little bit more confidently in your kitchen, because chicken's something that some people are kind of freaked out about. I have a really fun quote in my cookbook by Ree Drummond where she talks about how she's seen grown women squirm and run away from raw chicken because we've all been taught to fear salmonella and to make sure that we're cooking it all the way. And as a result of that, many of us are drastically overcooking our chicken. And we're going to get into that a little bit later today. I'm going to focus on boneless, skinless chicken breasts, which are a little bit ubiquitous, but all of us are cooking them. So I'm going to help you with that. And I'm also going to focus a little bit on cooking whole chickens or chicken on a bone. If you are an experienced chicken cook, I want you to listen and think about, yes, those are the things that I am doing, and that's why my chicken tastes good. Or maybe you'll learn something new and you'll think, I never thought about doing it that way. And one small little tweak can really change how you're cooking chicken. It's not unlike last week's episode when I talked about how to cook ground beef. Nothing I said was really groundbreaking, but there's a few little techniques that can really make a big difference. The first one is how to even buy chicken in the grocery store. You go to the grocery store and there is chicken that is priced all the way from 99 cents a pound to $9 a pound. I kid you not. There are so many different ways to purchase chicken. And I want to kind of talk about some of the labels that you're going to see on chicken. I'm not going to tell you what kind of chicken to buy for your family because everyone has different budgets. Everyone has different values when it comes to their meat. I will talk about how I have chosen to purchase chicken and why I've chosen to purchase it that way. But I kind of want to do an overview of some of the labels that you will find on chicken, what they mean and what they really don't mean. The first thing is the least expensive chicken that you find in the grocery store is usually going to have a label on it that says broth solution added or retains a percentage of liquid. What that means is that they have added salt to the chicken. Broth solution is another way of saying salt, and it plumps up the chicken so that it weighs more so they can charge you more, but you're actually kind of getting a little bit less chicken meat. It's nominal, but it does happen, and it adds sodium to your chicken. So if you are buying chicken with broth solution, you probably want to dial back on the amount of salt that you're adding. The other thing about chicken that has broth solution added is that it will often exude more liquid when it cooks. Sometimes that's not a big deal, and sometimes it really is a big deal. So if you are making a chicken stir fry, you're not going to get a good browning on that chicken unless you pull off some of the extra liquid, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. If you are making something like a roast chicken and vegetables all in a sheet pan, kind of like Kendra Adachi, the Lazy Genius's Change Your Life Chicken. I'll link to that in the show notes. It's a really great recipe. If you're making that and you're using chicken that has broth solution added, your veggies aren't going to crisp up as well. And you either have to pull off the liquid or think about buying a chicken that does not have salt solution added. Organic. What does organic chicken mean? It means that the chicken has been fed a organic feed that does not have animal byproducts in it. So they're eating a vegetarian feed. The vegetarian feed is organic. It does not contain any genetically modified grains. It also means that the chicken does not have antibiotics. It also means that they have access to the outdoors, but that does not necessarily mean the access is used by the chickens. You really can't count on that. Free range is kind of the same thing. If you have a free range chicken, it can be organic or not organic, but it means that they have access to the outside. And sometimes that means they can just pop their head outside. It's not like the chickens are out wandering in the pastures. They have the opportunity to run out in the pastures, but know that you cannot count on that as well. If you have air chilled chicken, that means after the chicken has been butchered, they chill it quickly in cold air rather than in an ice water bath, which is the typical way. Air chilled chicken sometimes does taste a little different. It usually has a more robust flavor because it doesn't have any extra water from either the broth solution or even just the chilling process of putting the chicken into ice baths to chill them down after they have been butchered. The bottom line is read your labels, think about what is important to you and what isn't important to you. For me, and this is really just me, I choose to look for chicken that does not have salt added because then it has less liquid and I have full control over the amount of salt that is going into the chicken. I don't always buy that kind of chicken. 90% of the time I do when I'm seeking it out. I choose not to spend the extra money on organic right now because I'm feeding a family of 6 and we are eating, 15 pounds of chicken a week. It just doesn't work in our family budget for me to buy organic chicken at this time. My absolute preferred way to get chicken is to get it from a local farmer, get whole chickens from a local farmer. They are super fresh. They don't have any salt added. They have not even been air chilled. They just come straight from the farmer and they taste different and they taste really, really good. But they're also very, very expensive. And so it's kind of a personal choice, but that's a little bit about how to kind of demystify some of the labels that you find on chicken in the grocery store. That said, if you find a good price on chicken, consider buying lots of it and freezing it. I have an entire episode on freezing chicken 101. It's episode 74. Go back and listen to that episode if you end up with a really good sale on high quality chicken. And that will kind of walk you through how I freeze chicken. There are 2 things that you need to have good chicken. The first one is you need salt. And I believe in a high quality sea salt like Celtic sea salt or a Himalayan salt. I'm not the biggest fan of table salt for chicken. Kosher salt is okay because it has kind of larger grains, which is something that I'm going for, but it also has some of those trace minerals that have been taken out. And I really find that having salt with the original trace minerals like sea salt or Himalayan salt has a better flavor in the chicken. You need salt and you also need an instant read thermometer. I am going to link to my favorite brand of thermometer on Amazon. It is not the exact one that I have because they do not make that one anymore. I have in the past recommended an OXO instant read thermometer. I am not a fan of it anymore. My parents got one and within 6 months it died. I actually had them send it back and I bought them one of my favorite ones, which is the Polder instant read thermometer. They're about $20. It is one of the best kitchen investments you can make if you are going to be cooking chicken, because cooking chicken to the right temperature is key to having safety and quality taste. So many of us are overcooking our chicken because we are afraid of the food safety issue. And I want to let you know that an instant read thermometer will take those fears away because you know that your chicken has come to a safe temperature. Let's dive into talking about boneless, skinless chicken breasts. Boneless, skinless chicken breasts are a really lean source of protein. There isn't a lot of fat on them. They are unevenly shaped. There is usually a thicker and wider end at one piece of the breast and a thinner and narrower end at the other piece of the breast. And that can cause problems when you are trying to cook a whole chicken breast. In episode 25, I talk about how to grill chicken breast. And then I also have my recipe for the best grilled chicken breast. I'm going to link to both of those in the show notes because I'm kind of going to give you the bird's eye view of grilling chicken breast. And in those two pieces of content, I go in much deeper into how to grill chicken breast. The key is that you want to have them of an even thickness. So you're either going to need to cut that chicken breast or you're going to need to put it between plastic wrap and pound it out with a cast iron skillet or a meat mallet because you will not want to be having part of it dry while the other part is undercooked. And the key to making that happen is to have an even thickness. The other thing is you want to salt your chicken well. A rule of thumb is when you're using a large grain salt like Celtic sea salt, you're using about a teaspoon of salt per pound. That is for chicken that is not having broth solution added. If you have broth solution added, you probably want to cut that down to about 3/4 of a teaspoon. If you're using a fine grain salt, you're going to cut that back even more. I like to use a large grain salt and about a teaspoon per pound. When you are grilling chicken breasts, you want to salt them well, and you either want to salt them right before you cook them, or preferably salt them about an hour before you cook them, or put them in a marinade. If your marinade is salt and an acid, so think lemon juice, salt, and oregano. Salt and an acid, you do not want it to sit in that marinade for more than an hour. If you add a fat to that marinade, then you can let it sit for several hours or up to overnight. You don't want to let chicken sit in a marinade for too long because it can get mushy. And that acid by itself without the fat kind of starts to denature the proteins and you can end up with some mushy chicken. So I like to use a salt, an acid, and a fat and marinate it for 3 or 4 hours if possible. Sometimes I go a little longer, sometimes I go a little shorter, but that's kind of the general rule of thumb. You want to have your grill screaming hot when you put this chicken on and then turn it down to about medium. So you put it on screaming hot, let it cook on one side, flip it, let it cook on the other side. The key to chicken is you want to take it off the grill when it's about 160 degrees because 165 degrees is fully cooked according to the FDA. You know you're totally safe if it's at 165 degrees, and it is going to continue rising in temperature as it rests. And that is the third point, is anytime you're cooking chicken after you have finished cooking it to the proper temperature, which in this case, take it off the grill at 160 degrees, let it set for about 10 minutes. It's going to continue to rise in temperature as it sits there, and it's going to come up to that 165, which is the fully safe temperature. You check the temperature in the thickest part of the chicken. If the chicken is a nice even thickness, like I've told you to make it, then you want to check it in the middle of the chicken breast with an instant read thermometer. Second way to cook boneless, skinless chicken breast is to pan fry them. Pan frying them is actually similar to grilling them. Sometimes you're going to dredge them in some flour. Sometimes you're going to fully bread them and you're going to cook them in a lot of oil. Sometimes you're kind of going to do just a shallow saute. The key is when you are pan frying chicken breast is, again, get them to an even thickness, because you don't want parts of the chicken to be overcooked while the other thicker part of the chicken is still not to a safe temperature. Butterfly them, slice them, pound them out with a meat mallet between plastic wrap. It doesn't matter, but get them to an even thickness. If you want to bypass that step of getting chicken to an even thickness, this goes for grilling or pan frying, do what my friend Ann does and buy chicken tenders. They are about the same thickness, about the same size throughout. You're going to have smaller pieces of chicken. They're going to cook faster. They're going to actually marinate a little bit more. She uses chicken tenders to make my tequila lime chicken all the time. She's kind of like the tequila lime chicken evangelist. She's always telling everybody about tequila lime chicken. She'll take tequila lime chicken dinner packets to people's houses. She loves tequila lime chicken, and she's found that the tenders skip all the step of getting everything to the same thickness and the same size because they're already kind of pre-cut for you. So that's a little trick on grilling and pan frying. When you are pan frying, you want to make sure that you have plenty of oil. Even if you're just doing a saute, you want to make sure that you have a full coating of oil along the bottom of the pan, and you do not want to crowd your pan too much. This is going to come into play a little later when I talk about chicken pieces as well. But the key is you need airspace around each of those pieces of chicken in your pan, which means if you're like me and feeding a family of 6, you either need to have 2 pans of chicken going or you need to cook it in batches. Both are totally fine. If you are cooking in batches, you want to make sure you wipe out your pan in between so that you don't get too many brown bits in there. But you want to make sure that there is lots of airspace around all of the pieces of meat so that they do not steam in the pan from any of the liquid that they exude. Also, if you find that your chicken is exuding a lot of liquid and you're trying to pan fry it, you need to pull off some of that liquid. Just tilt your pan, use a big wide spoon, put it into a bowl or a cup or something on the side. Oftentimes you're going to be making a sauce or you're going to be adding other ingredients later. Once the chicken has kind of gotten nice and browned, then you can add that liquid back, but the liquid will keep the chicken from browning. That's also really important when we're talking about the last way to cook chicken breast, and that is when it is cut into pieces. Oftentimes like a 1-inch chunk of chicken is what you will see for things like stir fry or my ginger pear chicken, or sometimes even like a tikka masala. You're going to use 1-inch chunks of boneless, skinless chicken breast. If you are using that, some of the same rules apply. You want to salt that chicken shortly before you cook it. Soy sauce counts as salt. It is one of my favorite ways to salt 1-inch chunks of chicken. But when you are taking those chicken pieces and you are putting them into your skillet, you've got to be aware of that liquid. First of all, you don't want it all to come sputtering back up at you. So you want to take the pieces out. Don't just dump the chicken and the soy sauce into the pan because it's going to sputter and make a mess in the oil. But also that liquid from the soy sauce is going to cause the chicken to not brown as well unless you drain off the liquid. When you are cooking chicken pieces, you want to make sure that they are even sizes. You don't want one piece that's overcooking while another piece is undercooking. You want your hot skillet and you want your oil hot in your skillet. Then you are going to put the chicken pieces into the skillet and you are going to leave them alone. I talked about that last week with the ground beef. People do not leave their meat alone in the pans, and they just need to be there and be happy for a while. That is how you're going to get a nice deep browning. A couple of years ago, I did a symposium for some teachers for a school district here in Kansas, and they were in the home ec room, and I was teaching them how to make my ginger pear chicken. And I think I had like 12 different people in this home ec room, and they were all following the same recipe. Their equipment was slightly different. Some had gas stoves, some had electric stoves, some had nonstick skillets, some had stainless steel skillets, and it was crazy how different their recipes looked. Some of them had a deep, dark brown sauce that had lots of flavor, and some of their sauces were really pale. And there were 2 things that were causing the differences in these dishes. Same recipe, same situation. The first thing is the size of the skillet. Some of them were overcrowding their skillets and they didn't do batches when they had a smaller skillet. When you do that, you are not going to get a nice browning on your chicken. You are going to have that chicken steam. The other thing that caused some of them to have dark, rich brown sauces was that they let their chicken alone. They put it in the pan and they let it be until it was almost totally cooked through and they had a nice brown crust on one side, and then they stirred it up and added the other ingredients. That is where the flavor is going to come. That is where the texture is going to come. And you want to put your chicken in the pan with lots of airspace around the pieces and leave it alone until it's nice and brown, and then flip. Another thing is overcooking is a real big issue when you are dealing with 1-inch chunks of chicken and you're going to be adding ingredients like sauces later. You want to brown that chicken, but it's still going to be raw on the inside. Then after the chicken is fully browned, you are going to add the other ingredients and let it continue cooking in those other ingredients. Again, your goal is to get it to 165 degrees and not any higher. So you want to make sure that you allow time for it to continue to cook as you add the other ingredients. Okay, let's shift and talk about chicken on the bone. Episode 50 of the podcast talks about roast chicken, and roast chicken is one of my favorite things to make in the winter, especially on busy nights because I prep it the night before. When you are dealing with chicken on the bone, you need salt and you need time before you cook it. If you go to roasted chicken and you just sprinkle a little salt on the outside and put it in the oven, it is going to be dry and it is not going to have a depth of flavor. Salt and thyme are crucial anytime you are cooking chicken on a bone. And that can be a whole chicken, or that can be like bone-in skin on chicken thighs, or bone-in skin on chicken breasts, or chicken legs, or chicken wings, any of it. Chicken wings are a little bit harder because there's so much skin that you really can't, you kind of just have to salt them from the outside. But if you are doing thighs, legs, breasts, a whole chicken, I want you to lift up that skin and use your hands to separate the fascia, which is a connective tissue holding the skin to the meat. And I want you to rub the salt underneath the skin directly on the meat. If you are doing things like bone-in chicken thighs, you may want to cut off some of the excess skin so you don't have too much fat. You want to put that salt underneath the skin, and then you want to refrigerate the chicken for at least 3 hours. But if you can do it for a day or even 2 days, even better. And if having crispy skin is important to you, which who doesn't love a piece of crispy chicken skin? If having crispy chicken skin is important to you, you want to have that in the refrigerator without any plastic wrap or lid or covering on it. You want it open to the air because the air of the refrigerator will actually dehydrate the surface of the skin, and that is going to cause a crispier skin because water is the enemy of crispiness. And that's part of the reason why I don't like those chickens with broth solutions added to them, because they have more water, they retain more water, and it's harder to get a crispy skin on them because they're going to exude more steam and more water. But when you have that chicken and it's got that salt underneath the skin, do you remember science class, middle school science class? My girls are in middle school. They totally learned about that last year. Osmosis. Osmosis, you're putting the sodium, the salt, onto the surface of the meat. The meat fibers are going to draw in the sodium from the salt. And when that happens, they are actually going to exude some of their juices. And then those juices are kind of going to mix with the salt that's still left on the surface. And as it sits for hours or days, eventually those juices and the salt grains that are sitting on the surface are going to go back into the meat, and you are going to get a juicier chicken that has a much deeper flavor. It's going to be seasoned throughout. When you are doing whole chicken, you want lots of time. My best tip for doing that is if you know you're going to do chicken on a bone one day, the night before when you are cleaning up your dinner dishes, just salt your chicken before you clean up your counters. Your kitchen's already a mess anyway. Salt your chicken, put it on a rack, like a cooling rack on top of a rimmed baking sheet, and put it in your refrigerator and let the air circulate around it. And air, time, and salt is going to give you the best flavored chicken. A little word about white meat versus dark meat. White meat chicken, which is the wings and the breast, need to come up to 165 degrees, and you don't want to go much higher because they are going to get dry. Dark meat chicken has a higher percentage of fat and a higher percentage of connective tissue in it. And that connective tissue does not start to break down into collagen until it hits about 180, 185 degrees. And that's when you're going to get that really succulent, soft, and tender dark meat. Dark meat is safe to eat at 165 degrees, but it is not soft and succulent and tender until it hits about 180, 185 degrees. So when you are cooking chicken pieces, the breast and the wings you want to cook to 165, and the thighs and the legs you want to let go to about 180, 185 degrees. And that is how you are going to get the best tasting chicken on a bone. So I want to know, join me in the Feed Your Family Tonight Facebook group and tell me, first of all, how often do you cook chicken every week? No shame if it's 7 days a week. I've been there. And did you learn anything today about how to make your chicken taste a little bit better? Next week, we're going to talk about how to be more efficient in the kitchen. I can't wait to talk with you then. But for now, friends, have a wonderful week and take care.
Thanks for listening to Feed Your Family Tonight podcast with your host, Mariefiebach. If you like the show and want to know more, please visit feedyourfamilytonight.com. And if you'd like to help support the show, please leave a rating or review on iTunes or Apple Podcast. It helps spread the word that you can feed your family tonight.